Tell me about family life in your countries. And I don't know how much you know about family life in our country, but maybe you can kind of contrast what you might know about our family situations and family in your countries.
Yeah, for the case of Tanzania, a majority of the people still believe in, having a big family that is, maybe 8, 6, 7, or 10 children, which is not the case in the U.S. People are sort of concerned about having a very small family. For example, I grew up in a family of 5 children, but now, because of family health programs which we have back home, and inflation biting a lot, so there is this need to limit the number of children which one can have. So most Tanzanians are now becoming to realize that there's a need of limiting the number of kids which they can have. If you take for my case, I mean, if I live for the next 30 or 40 years, which I believe I'll do, I would like to maybe to have just 2 children, and that's all. It's enough for me.
Is there a lot of education effort in your country to try to get people to...
Absolutely. We have a lot of public campaigns, and in this case, the national radio is very much used, trying to sensitize people on family health issues, family health programs, how to plan their families. They also use the television a lot, and the print media. We also have billboards on the roads erected, to educate people on the importance of having a limited number of children so that you can easily cater for them and send them to good schools and feed them well.
Okay, the difference I noticed between family life in Nigeria and the U.S. is that we still frown out divorce back home in Nigeria and in some other West African countries. It's not socially acceptable. You can do it, but people frown at it. But I've seen that people accept divorce as one of the facts of life in the United States. Again, we have very close families at home. You have the extended family. You're supposed to like all of them. You keep in touch. You can always welcome them into your house any time of the day. I think you have more of the nuclear family system here. And then the children are a bit freer here. Back home, a child is not supposed to talk back at the parents or to say certain things when the parents are around. But the children here are allowed a lot of freedom. They can just say whatever they feel like saying. And that's part of everyday life here.
How would you say your 2 countries are different from each other? I mean, in the United States we look at Africa kind of as one big homogeneous place, and we forget that it's made up of many different ethnic groups and different societies and so forth. So how would your 2 countries be different?
I think Africa is one and the same. The only major barrier in some of the countries is language. That is, she comes from West Africa. I cannot speak, her language, the Igbo language, or Yoruba, or Hausa, or any other ethnic groups which are there. But if it is in terms of social behavior, Africa is one and the same. The moment we got in touch with her, I saw much in her which is done in East Africa. She can be rude, she can be annoyed, she can be happy, which was just a reminiscent of what is happening back in my country. So Africa is one and the same problems, the same social life, the same social behavior.
Yeah. I think he's right. And I believe there's something called the African spirit, which every African has. Because most of the time we react to issues the same way. The only difference, like you said, is that we don't speak the same language, but we can communicate in English, but we don't have a common language. And most of the time there are slight differences in that my country tries to act big. Anyway, we are the big brother in Africa. We are supposed to be the giant of Africa. And I'm talking about Nigeria. So it's like we are larger in number, larger in size, and then more modernized than some of the African countries. That's about the only difference.
What would you say are lasting effects from the colonialism of the past?
Okay, for my case, it's the language. They left English language behind in my country. And anyway, it's much larger than that. I don't think Nigeria has so many diversities that I think they should have allowed it to be a confederation or a very loose federation. But they just picked people with so many differences and put them together, most of the time against their will. And those people are still disagreeing up to today.
You're talking about like the drawing of the national borders.
I mean, in Nigeria, the British, I don't think they really bothered about who they were putting together. They just picked people from different, people from the same region, but with so many diversities, and then put all of them together. I think if they had been more careful, or if they had cared more, they would have put in place certain things that would allow these people to stay together more peacefully.
You think that that has had an effect on the many changes of government in Nigeria over the years? Or is it more on how different ethnic groups relate to each other?
I think if you really study Nigeria's history, the British were using the divide and rule principle. That is, they made sure that the people were disagreeing all the time, so that there wouldn't be enough unity to fight them. So they made sure that the people weren't united.
Yeah, actually,
before they left.
By extension was what she just mentioned, because I wanted to dwell on it a little bit. The aspect of divide and rule. You see, after the Berlin Conference, we had these demarcations, the borders and the frontiers. It did a big effect to us politically, but not socially, because much as the divide and rule was brought by the British, but still you have for example, you have the Maasai. This is a very famous tribe, and it's nomadic. You know, they don't believe in frontiers, they don't believe in borders. So they easily cross into neighboring Kenya and come back to Tanzania when they feel like. So that is one of the major effects which the British left in East Africa. And just like what she mentioned, the aspect of language. But for the case of Tanzania, it's rather different, because initially we were under the Germans and then the British came in. So when we got independence in 1961, the founding fathers of our country really struggled to rise beyond, to rise above, the language effect, so that they canvassed for the popularity of Kiswahili as the national language, and which is the case at the moment. So we have the problem, we have the effect of language, but not so much like the case of Nigeria, because many and majority of Tanzanians are fluent and communicate easily in Kiswahili than in English.
Well, thank you very much. You both had to go, and I appreciate this.
Thank you.